Rolling towards the NHL draft, some more news on Jeff Skinner, and then we'll talk forward prospects, my top 5 forward options for the Sabres that might be available at pick 11 come Friday night. All ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. It is Wednesday. We are 2 days away from the NHL Draft Round 1. We have buyout windows starting in the NHL. Some news on Jeff Skinner on that front. Today we'll talk draft. We'll get into forward prospects, 5 forward options for the Sabres should they stay at 11 or around 11 in the NHL Draft. Hadi Kalakash, by the way, I've been promising him on the show, Locked On NHL Prospects. He is actually going to come on after the draft. We'll actually spend more time. He's got a lot of requests. He's in Vegas for the draft. I figured, you know what? Why don't we wait? Let's wait to see who they pick, and then we'll go all in on that guy and who also they pick in the second round, third round. And even if they trade guys, we can get into all that with Hadi after the draft. So we got a preview for you coming today, and then we'll also have a defensive prospect preview for you as well. But today we will dive in on the forwards. We've got an Iginla in the draft. We've got an Yzerman in the draft, both projected to go somewhere around the Sabres. So we'll get into all of those options coming up in a little bit on today's show. If you want to become a texter to our text line and you are not already a subscriber, you want to sign up, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and that's where you could sign up there. You can text a reply in, you can text a question in, and then, of course, you can once you sign up, it's all on your phone. Not everything is through that website. That's just where the sign up is. Today, for instance, we try to send out breaking news alerts as quickly as possible. 3 minutes after Chad DiDomenicis reported about Jeff Skinner, we had it up on our text line. Hopefully you got it first. If you're not, on Twitter every second of the day like I am, we're trying to get you the news as quickly as possible. By the way, a couple of the comments from that. Like one texter texted in, I'm not really sure how to feel about this. And I'm not sure how to feel about what is, of course, something we've been building up to that we've already kind of talked about a couple of times because it's been relatively expected as the weeks have gone on, is that Jeff Skinner will get bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. It's still not official, but we heard it more concretely reported on today than we have yet. Chad DiDomenicis expected Buffalo. He tweeted out today that multiple sources have confirmed to him that the Sabres will buy out Jeff Skinner, with the exception of an unforeseen trade that would come. And maybe that's why the Sabres might wait. By the way, they can wait if they want to. They don't have to do it right now. There's no reason, I guess, to do it this second. They can hold off. And as long as they've bought him out by June 30th at 5 p.m., so June 30th, of course, is what, Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. So by Sunday at 5 o'clock, they can really wait all the way up to that deadline. Just wait, see if anybody wants to bite, anybody wants to buy him out or trade for him you could take him for free, take the contract off our books. Hey, maybe even we'll retain some salary. But I'm not projecting that's going to happen. I think this is it. Skinner's going to get bought out. And that is going to be the end of his 6-year career for the Sabres. He will finish 18th all-time in Sabres history in goals. That is 5 behind Pat LaFontaine. That's above the likes of Jack Eichel and Drew Stafford and Jochen Hesch and Maxim Afinogenov. Some good names that he is above, of course. Skinner, the cap space is going to get opened up here. And we'll see how much the Sabres will use. They will save $7.5 million this year, $4.5 million next year, $2.5 million the year after that. They will lose $2.4 million the next 3 years off of what they would previously have. So that's the buyout in a nutshell. That's the most important part of the buyout, at least. Skinner, though, is going to have, I guess, kind of a weird legacy for the Sabres, he's going to be one of the more well-liked players, I think, of the drought. I don't know how many are going to outrank him. Like, when he comes back for the first time, everyone's joke today is he's going to come back in a Maple Leafs uniform. And, of course, he's going to win the Stanley Cup next year because that's how all this goes with former important Sabres. Skinner really, I think, by the way, is going to find a contender. I hope he gets to the playoffs. He's never been to the playoffs before. He's the only person in hockey that has a longer playoff drought than a Buffalo Sabres fan. He has one more year of not making the playoffs than a Sabres fan does. So, sad, but makes sense. Like it. It's, to me, the number one option, especially given that they didn't seem content with the idea of putting him back in the top 6. And as I've been saying throughout this process, if you're not going to put him in the top 6, you have no reason to have him on the team anymore. So, okay, buy him out. And they did. And let's see what they can do with that extra $7.5 million, or maybe they won't do anything with the extra $7.5 million. I hope they do, but you never know. So that's the Skinner buyout. We'll see when it's official. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's the scoop, is that what we've been talking about probably happening in the Skinner buyout is going to happen. That according to Chad Dieteminis. The other newsy thing that happened today is Fanatics dropped some details about their first exploration here into NHL uniforms. They have the deal in Major League Baseball. It's been such a bad company with certain things over the years. Cheap always comes to mind. And that's exactly what happened with baseball. Just lazy looking, the see-through pants that they really haven't even still fixed. It just was a complete and utter disaster. They clearly, though, made an effort not to have that happen here. So Fanatics bought the factory that Adidas used to make all their NHL jerseys in their last contract. They bought that factory. They kept all the same workers. Like, hey, we're just going to take this on. We're going to slap our logo on it, and we're not going to change a thing. They really didn't change any of the uniforms also in the NHL. The Sabres uniform looks exactly the same. You had a couple uniform changes that were going to happen anyway. The Kings are going back to their throwbacks on a regular basis. The Ducks introduced an orange Mighty Ducks uniform. You have the Utah jerseys, which is just a Utah going diagonal. So you did have some teams with new uniforms, but they're not doing some crazy new initiative like when we had reverse retro a couple of years ago, which, by the way, I liked. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be a bad thing. But Fanatics today, I think I'm more optimistic about that deal than I ever have been. I thought it was going to be a complete and utter disaster having them as a partner with the NHL. It's such a bad reputation going into this. But I guess so far, so good. So far, so good. But I guess I'll believe it when I see it on night one that the jerseys are going to look the same, but that's how it seems so far. One last thing on this. This is not something that I even knew was not available to hockey fans for the last 10 years. But Fanatics, apparently what has happened is there have been 2 tiers of jerseys available. High-end replicas and lower-end replica jerseys. I guess I never knew that. I guess I always assumed the high-end were the jerseys that the players wore, or were basically the exact same as what players wore, and that the low-end were replicas. But that's not what I guess was happening. They both were replicas, just different forms of quality of a replica. It's been since 2014 when Reebok stopped doing it that NHL fans have had available to them the exact jersey, the exact manufacturing process from the exact factory, the fight strap, the material, everything exactly the same to what a player wears. Pro authentic, they're calling it. Fanatic. Pro authentic. This jersey is to a T exactly what a player gets. That is being made available for the first time in 10 years by Fanatics. They will have 3 tiers of jersey. Now, that top tier, I mean, what are jerseys now in the high end? $250? That pro authentic jersey they're coming out with, I mean, it's probably going to cost $400 at least, maybe $500. So it's not that it's going to be cheap, but it is cool to me that that's being made available because I didn't even know up until this point that it wasn't available at all. Because that would be the one I would want. I would know that. Can't get a lot of them at that price, but we'll see what that ends up being. When we come back, Let's get into the forwards that could be available. 5 forwards that could be available to the Buffalo Sabres at pick number 11. That's back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicles and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. Be sure to make your next listen Locked On Sports Today. If you're sick of all that screaming and shouting on Fox Sports, ESPN, or whatnot, check out Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube, 24/7 streaming, also free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's available there as well. All right, let's get to some of the forwards. Top 5 forwards that I think could be available to the Buffalo Sabres at pick number 11. In the NHL draft. We will start with one guy that I think is a little less likely to be available than anybody else. And that person is Tij Iginla, son of Jarome Iginla. Big riser this year when it comes to the draft rankings. The reason why I'm putting him right at the start here is I don't know how likely he is to be available. I kind of can't see him getting past the Calgary Flames. And the Flames pick before the Sabres. And can they really pass on Iginla's son? Can they really pass on one of their all-time players' son that is projected to go right around where they pick, even if it's a tie or if he's slightly below somebody else on their pre-draft board? Don't you give him an extra boost? Don't you give him an extra boost to figure that out? So Iginla, though, if he were to be available to the Sabres, I'm not fully expecting, but he's projected around that range. 6-foot player, Kelowna Rockets in the WHL. This guy is a pure goal scorer, one of the purest goal scorers in this draft, but a hard-nosed guy, physical player, 47 goals in 64 games. I think he is a very, very reasonable option to the Sabres should he be available. He's the one guy of this list, though, that I'm not quite believing is going to be available. Next up, Konsta Helenius, Finnish center, 5'11", two-way player. This dude, you want to talk about tough to play against? This guy will not leave you alone. He is a pest. He is the words that have been associated in all the pre-draft profiles I've read about Helenius. Tough to play against, energy, tough nose, pisses you off. You got some Sam Bennett comparisons for what I saw, who's a player that a lot of Sabre fans would like them to acquire this summer. Helenius, two-way centerman, probably projects more as a second-line center in the NHL. I'm not sure after reading and watching a little bit of his stuff over the last couple of days that he's got the high-end offensive ceiling, but certainly somebody that I think would fit stylistically behind Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins someday on this team 2-3 years down the road. So Helenius, I like the player. I think I really like the idea of him being kind of a guy that you just can't stand. An opposing team can't stand. One of those guys. How many do we say it about? Marchand, Brady Tkachuk. You hate to play against them. You love to have them on your team. How about the Sabres get a guy like that? And it feels like Helenius is maybe some form of that. So he's my number 2 option the Sabres could have available to them at pick number 11. Third guy that I'm going to throw out here. This guy I'm going to have a tough time not falling in love with because it's the exact type of prospect I always fall in love with. Berkeley Caton. This guy is a WHL player, Spokane, and Berkeley Caton is probably going to be more of a middle of the first round pick, but picking him at 11 doesn't seem crazy. I've seen it mocked that way. Smaller forward again, 5'10". I know they have a lot of guys like this, but he is so skilled. So skilled. The highlight reel is off the charts. The hands are off the charts. The movement with his feet off the charts. He's so skilled. Most points by anybody that's projected to go in the top half of the first round. 116 points in the WHL last season. If you look at points per game in their draft year, The only guy, only two guys in the last 10 years that outrank him for points per game in his draft year are Sam Reinhart, who, of course, has been a great player and won the Cup the other night, and Connor Bedard. Those are the only two guys that outrank him. So Berkeley Caton, interesting player that I would love to see them get their hands on. When we come back, the other two forward options that are very different types, and I think both have some warts, and a power forward or a bigger forward that might be hard to get your hands on. We'll get to them when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented on the show by Gametime. Check out the Gametime app. It is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. You got a quick drive north for Toronto. You got a quick drive west for Cleveland, a quick drive south for Pittsburgh if you want to check out some Major League Baseball this summer. They make tickets fast and easy. Prices on Gametime actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. Sometimes they're even available after first pitch with killer last minute deals, all in prices. You get the views from your seat right there in the app. You're scrolling through to show you the exact angle that you're looking at when you buy the ticket, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Those last minute deals are huge. Flash deals, zone deals. They've always got something to get some extra money in your pocket when you're buying your tickets. The lowest price guarantee. So what that is they'll credit you 110% of the difference. Should you find a price lower. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, and let's continue on with our forward preview of this draft. Of course, the Sabres could pick other guys, some other names that I have not yet mentioned that could become available to them. I think you're looking at probably Trevor Connolly, USHL, Tri-City, good dynamic offensive player in this draft. Liam Greentree from Windsor in the OHL is an option here. Jet Luchenko from Guelph in the OHL is also someone that could go right around there. I think that's about it, other than the two guys that I'm about to talk about. If you want size, if you are somebody that is sick and tired of the Sabres drafting 5'10", 5'11", 6-foot players, because that is something they've done a lot of. They've drafted a lot of smaller players in the last couple of years. This might not be the draft for you, unless it's this guy. Beckett Sinecki from Oshawa. Beckett Sinecki is 6'3". He is dynamic. But he is, I looked, of the top 10 ranked forwards in this draft, Sinecki is the only one that is above 6 foot. That's it. 6 foot, above 6 foot, this is the guy. He is got the size. He has got the athleticism. He's got the ability to score. Very, very dynamic player. More than a point per game in the OHL last year. 68 points in 63 games. Again, if you're looking for kind of like Hellenius. If you're looking for that guy that's going to piss off the other team, one scout in Bob McKenzie's write-up of Sinecki described him as having an FU vibe to his game. Sure, fans love to hear that. Kind of checks a lot of the boxes. I guess, like, what would be the big criticism of him? Like, I don't even know that I've really seen what the big problem with his game is. I know maybe foot speed is a little bit of a thing. He's got so much quickness, though, side to side, that I feel like he makes up for that. And that's at least from my view of it, the quickness as someone that hasn't watched him a ton. I guess the passing ability is right there at the top. Like, I don't really know what's really the problem with Sinecki, but there's got to be something. Maybe it's just the point totals, right? Because there are a lot of other guys here. 68 points in 63 games. It's really good, but it's not a lot. Here's something. Bob McKenzie, this is from his write-up. One scout told him he was amazing from January on. That scout said there wasn't one thing I liked about his game from October to January. Not a single thing. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's because he's just kind of got on the scene here and just started playing great that he was only able to get that high on draft boards. But if you want big, Bennett Sinecki is your guy. One other name, another former NHL name, Yzerman, although this one's spelled very different. Cole Yzerman from the United States National Development Program. He spells it, by the way, Eiserman. Cole Yzerman, United States National Development Program. 58 goals in 57 games last year. He is described by almost everybody I've read about him to have the best shot in the draft. His highlight reel is filled with just snipes. He broke the United States National Development Team Program, the USNDTB, at USNTDP. He broke their record for goals. This is a program that has had Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Tage Thompson, all the great U.S. players of the last decade. He broke the record, Cole Caulfield's record, for the most goals in a career at that program. That's crazy good. He finished second in that program's history in points, only behind Jack Hughes. The production is crazy good. But downside of him, Yzerman is not someone that can do much else. While he might have the best shot in the draft, he's not a big playmaker. He's not going to give you much in a two-way game. He's not going to give you much size and physicality. Like, he's really lacking in his overall game around that scoring ability. It's been mentioned about him that he has kind of a selfish game because of his shot, of course. That could be a reason for that. But people really wonder if he'll be able to do the things necessary to go from just a shooter to an all-around great hockey player in the NHL. One comparison I saw for him was Owen Tippett. Owen Tippett, who was, same thing, described as selfish player in juniors, and maybe he's someone that really figured out what he had to do to stick in the NHL, because it didn't look like that. He once upon a time, 2017, was the sniper of that draft. And in his first 4 seasons in the NHL, 1 goal, 7 goals, 10 goals, 10 goals. Those were his first 3 years. Last 2 years, 27 goals, 28 goals. He figured it out. Maybe Yzerman would be someone that could do the same thing. Maybe he's someone who could do it quicker, or maybe he's someone that would never figure it out and he wouldn't become a good enough all-around player in the NHL. But if you want elite goal scoring, this is someone that is available. Was the second-ranked prospect coming into the league this year. So teams must have done a deep dive on him, figured out he's not as good as they thought. That kind of spooks me a little bit. I'd rather have someone that's rising up boards. I think someone that's falling off boards. I don't like that, we had him number 2, and the more and more and more we learned about him, the less we liked him. That is the part I don't like about Cole Yzerman. But someone that is mocked around the Sabres pick at 11 very often. All right. That's it for forwards for us. Sabres could pick outside that group, of course. We'll talk defenseman prospects on our next show as we keep building up to Friday's NHL Draft. 8 o'clock on Friday from the Sphere. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk defenseman. If you've got from that breakdown or from others' breakdowns, if you've got a favorite forward for the Sabres that they could pick a number 11, be sure to text it to us, or you can comment on our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for listening to Locked On Sabres, making us your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.